My name is Michael Coates. I'm a former firefighter, but I'm also a former soldier. And it's the stories from the individuals within this military community that I'm desperate to document. Our next guest joined the British Army in his early 20s and within months found himself on the beaches of Dunkirk. Fighting in the North African desert, he was captured by the Nazis and spent the next 3 years as a prisoner of war. From suffering starvation to being firebombed at Dresden and his outlook on life now. Episode 26, Dennis Brock. This is Declassified. When was you born? What year?
1918. That makes me 100 years old, just over 100 years old.
What was the so you was born in Sunbury?
Yes, I was born in French Street, Sunbury, in an apartment which is over the Londis shop now. But in those days it was an ironmonger shop, and the man there sold everything for household: candles, paraffin, bags of coal, all sorts. Everything that a carpenter needs.
Yeah.
All those sort of things. Mr. Maidment. And my mother had the apartment over the shop. So my father was away in the trenches, but when he came home on leave, that's where he could come to.
Yeah.
But he was born just 5 doors away.
So it really was then, Sunbury was the family.
We really are a Sunbury family, although our background is in Ireland.
Yeah.
My father was born in Sunbury, but a couple of his brothers were born in County Fermanagh. But my mother and father were married in 1916 at St Mary's Church in Sunbury, the parish church.
And that's still the same church you go to?
Yes, and I was baptised in that church, and I've been there ever since. And for the last almost 90 years, I've been in charge of the bell ringing.
Really?
I'm a bell ringer, a campanologist.
What was childhood like then? So your dad was in the trenches. What was childhood like growing up? Did he ever speak about his experiences?
Later, but when he wasn't at first all in the trenches, he was a driver in the RASC, and he was driving to begin with in 1914. He volunteered with his brothers at the end of 1914 for the army, and they went to France. And my father was in the service corps, and he started off driving heavy lorries. He was a driver, ammunition to the front. But after a while, I think it was about a year or 18 months, he was transferred to drive a Rolls Royce for the brigadier staff car, an old-fashioned military Rolls. Because my father was his profession was a Rolls-Royce driver.
Oh, right.
He had been trained by Rolls-Royce. The very early Rolls-Royces that were on the road. So it was known on his military record that he could drive a Rolls. He knew a lot about them. So he drove the brigadier. And that was the only time he got a slight wound in the Rolls, not in the ammunition lorry, in the Rolls.
Yeah.
He got a cut in the neck, and the brigadier was wounded as well, like the shell fire.
Yeah.
And he was married to my mother, of course, in there. And I was a product of one of other coming home on leave, I think, to that.
Was it? I think there was a spike in people born in kind of 1918, 1919.
Well, yes. Well, it seemed to be the thing to do. The feeling was that when they came home on leave at that late time of the war, if they when they went back, that was the last time they'd be seen.
Oh.
So many men went back off that leave towards the end of the war, and they were killed. And there were a lot of men in French Street, friends of my father. They died.
Mm.
So it seemed to be the thing to leave somebody behind.
Yeah, okay.
And leave a baby.
And you were the product of that.
Yeah, I was a product of that marriage.
Yeah. Did you have any brothers and sisters? Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes. Later on, after the war, I had a sister, Kathleen, and she she was with my father. He was in service at Woking, and we had a tied house there. My father worked, he drove the rolls for his employer and looked after the gardeners, and that was going to be our family home. But I had a very, very short time at Woking because my mother died on my 5th birthday.
Oh.
In hospital at Woking on the operating table. And her mother, my maternal grandmother, brought me up to Sunbury to look after me for a short time while my father, while he was in service down at Woking, he looked after my daughter, my sister, because the female staff in the big house could look after a little girl.
Yeah.
But they didn't want a little girl and a boy, probably a troublesome boy.
Yeah.
Of 5.
Yeah.
You see. So my maternal grandmother hauled me away from Woking to look after me for a little while my father settled down. But I never went back.
How long was you with your grandmother?
How old?
How long was you with your grandmother?
Well, all her life.
Oh, really?
Then I lived in Sunbury with my grandmother and my grandfather until I got married when I was 27. I lived in Green Streets in Sunbury, next to the parish hall, in the cottage there, with them. And I got married from that house when I was 27.
Did you have a close relationship with your dad? Did you see your dad as a child?
Not as much as I would have thought, but he came up to on Sundays occasionally, probably about once a month, to see his mother in French Street, which was only 5 doors away from where I was born. He used to come up with the rolls to see her. When he left, before he left, he would give me a ride round Sunbury in the rolls, a little ride round. Yeah. And sometimes he brought my sister up.
Oh, great.
But I didn't see him a lot.
Nah.
And he married again after a couple of years after mother died. And they had a daughter, and that daughter is still alive, and she came up recently to see me.
Really?
And she's just given up driving. She's 96, I think. She's just given up driving. She lives in Birmingham. And on my 100th birthday, towards the end of last year, one of her sons brought her for the day to Sunbury from Birmingham. And her other son lives in the Channel Islands. He came over with his wife, and they met me in the parish hall at our party. We had a big family party, and there must have been about 80 people there.
Yeah, brilliant.
A lovely party. So I saw my my stepmother but it's I saw my half sister.
Yeah.
Betty.
Yeah.
He came.
Did you growing up though? Was the I suppose from when your mother died,
yes,
you kind of lost your dad as well in some ways because you came back to your grandmother and lived with your grandmother. So
yes.
when your mother died, you really was split.
Yes. Well, my mother is buried in Sunbury Cemetery.
Oh, okay.
We had a family grave there. My grandmother had bought a big plot for the double plot, and my mother always had a wish that if ever she died, she'd like to be buried at Sunbury, and she was. And the cemetery is only about 400 yards from where I live now.
Oh, right.
I see her grave
Yeah.
quite often. I saw it yesterday, actually.
95 years ago.
Yeah,
I've been there for 95 years.
all those years.
What was childhood like growing up? You know, when you moved to your grandmother's, what was childhood like growing up?
Oh, it was very friendly. Every household had children of my age and more. My grandmother had 8 children. And when I went to live there, my uncles and aunts were still at home. There were 7 of them. My mother was the eldest. She died. And so I was quite integrated with the family.
Yeah.
I know it was a bit tight. The sleeping arrangements were rather odd, but I used to sleep across the end of a bed with two of my uncles.
Oh, really?
They slept down the bed in a normal way, and I slept across the end by their feet.
Like a little cat.
Until they got
up.
married. One by one, they got married, and in the end, by the time the Second World War started, I was the only one at home with my grandparents.
You'd liberated the bed.
Yeah,
It
I
took
got
you
a bed,
years.
and then I went away.
If we move us forward a little bit then, how old was you when you joined the army?
20. In 1938, there was a crisis, the Munich crisis, when it was thought there would be a war, but an arrangement was made between Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister, and Adolf Hitler. There'll be no war. But everybody rejoiced. But early 1939, Hitler started moving again into Czechoslovakia, or one of those countries, and it looked as if there'd be a war coming up. So at the beginning of 1939, the government decreed that every young man at that time who was 20 should do 6 months training in the army. It was called the militia, and I was one of them. And we had to go away from home for 6 months, give up our jobs, and go back to them, of course, after 6 months. But I had my medical examination at Hounslow Barracks, passed out, okay, A1, and registered for the army, and I was interviewed at Hounslow Barracks for the Royal Artillery, a gunner. And that summer, I was called up to do my 6 months. War hadn't yet started, and I was ordered to go to Blandford in Dorset to start my 6 months training in the Royal Artillery. But before I went, in that week, before I went, there was a violent thunderstorm in that part of Dorset, and the whole camp, which was tented, was wiped away. All the tents were blown down and soaked. The place was under a couple of feet of water. And we had urgent messages, telegrams and on the radio, not to go until we received further orders, because anyone going to that camp, there was no camp.
Yeah, pointless.
It was washed away. So I went on a cycle tour for a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I was a very keen cyclist, and I went out with a group of people. So I quickly went on a week's holiday, and I went to Dorset and Somerset, and I passed by the camp that was ruined.
Yeah.
But when I got home, there was a telegram waiting to say I'd been recalled, but it was to Harrogate, outside Harrogate in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire. And I had to go to a camp, a hutted camp, brand new. It was only half finished when we got there. Big hutments, posh, good ones, and it was in a place called Pennypot Lane. We couldn't understand it. It got other names as well while we were there. But it was a very good camp, and I did 3 months training there. And after passing out there as a gunner, I went down to Ascot Racecourse for a short while, for a couple of weeks, and from there I went to France, to the British Expeditionary Force, the BEF.
Oh, so while your training was going ahead, and then the time in Ascot, war had been declared?
Oh yes, it was declared. War was declared when we were during the time of the washout camp, Blandford.
Right.
Blandford, yes.
Blandford, yeah.
And from Blandford I went to Harrogate. The war was on. War was declared on the 3rd of September, and I had that telegram to go to Yorkshire on the 1st of September.
Really?
You see, so I was already in the army. I was in the army from the middle of 1939. Then I went to France, and I joined, as a gunner, I joined the 50th Northumbrian Division, one of the batteries, the 296 battery. We spent that time, early 1940, polishing up our training with a proper field regiment. You see.
Was the fighting going on? Was fighting happening around you?
No, it hadn't started.
Right.
You see, the Germans started in the beginning of May 1940.
Right.
They marched through the Low Countries, through Luxembourg, through Belgium, into France, and we went into action around about the 10th of May. Real action. We went up to Belgium, up to the River Dyle on the front there, and we were in action, and we got driven back into France, but we went to all sorts of battlefields. We were in action nearly every day.
What was it like then? Those first days of conflict. So you're now in May 1940. War's been declared for nearly a year, coming up to a year.
Yeah.
You guys are the first people into battle against the Nazis?
Yes, well, there were several British divisions there, and we were one of them. The 51st Highland Division had they landed on the coast of France, but they didn't join us. They were ready up there, and they were in battle on the coast. But we got pushed back through Arras and over all the old battlefields of the Great War. Mm. It seems strange that we were like ghosts of our fathers. We went back over the battlefields that our fathers had been in, only 20 years earlier. But we got pushed back to the coast to Dunkirk, and thousands of British soldiers were trapped at Dunkirk. I was in the sea almost up to my neck because I managed to get onto a little boat, but it was bombed and it turned over, threw us into the sea, and I scrambled ashore, and by some miracle I managed to get to one of the piers where a British destroyer managed to get in. The destroyers were getting in, but only at the high tide. Mm. But when I got there, after being thrown into the sea, the tide was coming in, and there was a destroyer edging in, and I managed to get to the side of that, and the Navy people threw ropes over. We scrambled up ropes and got on, and we whizzed across to Dover.
Before if it's okay with you, I'd like to keep us in Dunkirk for a little bit before we move on.
Oh, yes.
What was it like? So we're now looking at like kind of the 26th of May, so not long after we'd first engaged with the German army. What was it like? What was was it desperate? Was it
desperate? And also the town of Dunkirk was on fire, and the Germans were shelling it from inland and also bombing it from the air, dive bombing, and the beaches were dive bombed. It was what commonly called hell on earth. Mm. But British Army kept its spirit up. Mm.
What was it? What was the kind of reality of war at that point? You know, you was only kind of 20-something days into fighting. The British Expeditionary Force had gone out over there and was expecting a fight. But was it the might of the Germans coming through? Was it overwhelming, the conflict?
Yeah, it was, but it was because we weren't prepared for the accurate dive bombing that the Germans had. The Stuka bombers they could pick us out, and their artillery was very hot. Mm. And of course, on the road to Dunkirk, the British infantry had to hold up, make gaps for us to get through. The guards, all sorts, and but we made it to the beaches, and of course down there were thousands, and a lot of people in the sea, and all.
What did you see there? Was there a lot of killing?
Well, there was very little hand-to-hand fighting when I got there, but there was a lot of death and injury from aerial bombardment and artillery bombardment. Mm. The Germans were bombarding. You see, for a distance of 20 miles round Dunkirk, the roads were blocked with vehicles. You couldn't move. Mm. We had to go on foot. It was the order went round more or less. It's every man for himself. Get to the coast, and we did. But of course, when we got to the coast, there were a good many more than us, and the sea, and boats sunk, destroyers blown up, and it was chaotic, really.
Yeah. We know each other through Kate Thompson, who's an author. She said to ask you about your officer at Dunkirk. Well, I'm not quite sure what she implied there, but I think you saved the life of someone at Dunkirk. Is that right? You'd explained something to her before about one of your officers at Dunkirk. Is that right?
Well, she might be mixed up with something. On the groins, the stone groins, we managed to scramble up there to get onto a destroyer. Now, there's a British officer there with a little dog.
Oh.
It was a regimental dog.
Yeah.
It's a mascot. And he was trying to get onto the destroyer, and the Royal Navy were in charge. And a Royal Navy officer said, throw the dog in the sea. He's not coming on any of our boats. But the young officer said, it's a regimental officer. I'm going to get it to England. And the Royal Naval officer, a petty officer, I think, he drew his revolver. He said, I'll shoot the dog, throw it into the sea. And there was an argument. In the end, the soldier officer threw the dog into the sea, and the naval fellow, he shot it. He said, it's not coming aboard, and it mustn't come to England. I suppose they were afraid of rabies or anything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it must have been so.
They just shot the dog, and the young officer said, I shall have to report you when I get back. The Navy fellow said, you just do that.
Yeah. What was the crossing like? Was you relieved, or was it still scary?
The crossing was, the boats were very crowded, of course, and a lot of wounded down in below decks. And it was very smooth going across. We went very full out. I think we must have gone across at 30 knots.
Right.
The destroyer rolling from side to side across. And it had to zigzag because of submarines, U-boats, and also aerial.
And was that all happening when you was going across?
Oh yes. And we zigzagged across to Dover so that we could miss any bombing or U-boats with torpedoes. We were escorted, of course, with anything, the RAF. They got about bad. I think they got a bit of a bad name because there weren't many aeroplanes about, but they were inland, keeping the Luftwaffe out of our area. But we managed to get across to Dover. It was a relief.
Was it? Did you feel? What was the feeling like when because what had happened over a period of 8 days? I think Winston Churchill said that if we can get 40,000 back, that would be in brackets successful. But
they got
340,000 back. And it's been referred to as the miracle of Dunkirk, but also referred to as a colossal military disaster by Winston Churchill. And he didn't want that to be forgotten. What was the feeling like back in England, back in the UK?
Well,
within the troops and the civilian population.
Well, the civilian population, of course, were pleased to see us. We were greeted because it was regarded as a miracle that so many had got back. I mean, so few of us thought we'd ever get back. But here we were back in England. And we had to find our regiments, what was left of some of them. And I had to go into hospital because I had been injured on the way to on the beaches at Dunkirk, in the town. I got wedged between two vehicles, and it took the skin off my back, and it was all stuck to my clothing because we couldn't change any clothing. We had boots on for about a fortnight.
Yeah.
And when I got to England, the first night we went by train to Aldershot and under canvas, and the next day we went down to Devon, to Oakhampton, because Oakhampton is an artillery town, and a lot of artillerymen were being pointed in that direction to be sorted out to find your own regiment. When I got to Oakhampton, I reported sick with my back, and they sent me to Manchester into hospital from Oakhampton in Devon and Dartmoor, right the way up to Manchester. And I spent a couple of nights in the zoo at Bellevue, the famous zoo.
What's the zoo?
But Manchester.
What, a proper zoo, you mean? Do you mean a proper zoo?
Yes,
With animals?
yes, there were lions and tigers in there. Yes, and but because I'd got a medical ticket with me, I found an MO, and they took me into a hospital. They set up a hospital in the old workhouse at Knutsford, the village of Knutsford, and I was in there for about 10 days while they treated my back and plastered it all over. And VAD nurses were doing all the dressings for us and everything. And when I was discharged, I came down to Tatton Park, which is not far from Manchester. And my regiment was under canvas there. And I was only there one night because we marched off the next day and got to trains. We went right down to the Bridport in Devon, Dorset, and we were put onto the beach at the Chesilbank between Bridport and Lyme Regis, and armed with American rifles and ammunition for the thought to be the invasion. We were put as infantry, all along the Chesilbank, and right along the south coast, of course, right from Brighton right the way through, right down to
So
Devon.
all those 340,000 got put straight back to work,
Yep,
defending the coast.
We were on duty down there. We just had rifles and bayonets, American issue, and we stayed like that until September, until the Battle of Britain was pretty well over. The RAF had sorted all that out with the Luftwaffe, and it was thought that there would be no invasion. So we went inland with our regiment. We went inland and we re-equipped. We got new uniforms. We got new 25-pounder field guns, brand new, and plenty of ammunition. And we got everything ready, and we went to Egypt.
So while Dunkirk was happening,
That was after Dunkirk.
After Dunkirk, but there was the war in North Africa was about to start around the same time.
Yes.
Go on. Well, you went to Egypt.
Well, the Battle of Britain had eased off, and the whole country was on the alert in case there was an invasion. But but the Germans did not invade. So we went inland and re-equipped and got ourselves ready. And we went to Glasgow. We loaded up all our guns and ammunition, everything on ships. And we got on a troop ship and we sailed for Egypt. We went to Egypt. We went round the Cape of Good Hope because we couldn't go through the Mediterranean for the U-boat scare. The Royal Navy was very busy escorting convoys, so we went right round the Cape. We stopped at Cape Town for about 4 days, had a bit of leave in Cape Town while they revitalised the ship. They took on food and water, and then we sailed on the east side of Africa, up by Madagascar, and we went up through to the mouth of the bottom mouth of the Suez Canal, and anchored there, and unloaded, and went on lighters, barges, into Egypt. We got all our equipment off the boat, and more beside, and then we went to a big tented camp in Egypt, not far from Ismailia, not far from Cairo, really. And when we got ourselves right, we set off for the Western Desert, and we went into the desert campaign.
What was the feeling like on the boat on the way around? What was the feeling like with the guys on the boat? Was a
bit crowded.
Was it?
There were 4,000 of us on board.
Yeah. Was the majority of them? Had they seen Dunkirk as well? Had they been at Dunkirk?
A lot of them, yeah. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. We had a lot of RAF personnel on board with us, and they were going to join the Desert Air Force. And we went to the Western Desert. We went up to Mersa Matruh. But while we were there, getting ourselves sorted out, ready to go into action further up the desert, there was crisis in Iraq. There was a mutiny in Iraq, and my brigade out of the division, 151 Brigade, we were rushed off by road up to Iraq to sort out this big rising. The Royal Air Force had a base at a place called Habania, and there was a lake there, and they had one of those seaplanes on there. But it was a Royal Air Force bomber base. But they were cut off by rebels, and we had to go up there to sort the rebels out, which we did. And so the RAF were freed again, and we went back down to the desert.
What did you do? What did you mean you sorted the rebels out? What did you do?
Well, we went in there with vehicles and armed, and arrested them and drove them off. They fled into the desert.
Was he fighting? Did you fight?
No, there were no shots fired. If any shots were fired, there were just a few, but the rebels packed in. They were headed by a man called Rashid Ali, who was a Nazi Arab, and he fled. We couldn't. The idea was to try and capture him, but he fled to Berlin. So the Germans looked after him in Berlin. So We didn't have him. But we went straight back to the desert, and we went up. We bypassed Tobruk. We went through Hellfire Pass, and we didn't go into Tobruk. Tobruk was already besieged. They had a 9 months siege there, and that was broken when we were on our way. But
so you started in Egypt. You went up to Libya. Was you in Libya?
Yeah, up into Libya. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tobruk was the port, one of the main ports.
Yeah, it was.
You went past Tobruk. That had British Australian in.
Right? We went about 40 to 50 miles west of Tobruk.
Right.
Gazala, and we dug in there, and we formed from the coast due south a line, and there was the South African First Division, the Polish Division, the Guards Brigade, our division, and another North Country division, and then the Free French. They were right down in the desert at Bir Hakeim. So that we formed the Gazala line, but we were about 40 to 50 miles west of Tobruk. We used to drive into Tobruk to get petrol, to get food. All our supplies came out of Tobruk from the sea.
Even when it was getting besieged?
Part of that time, part of it, yes, besieged. We used to go at night.
Right.
But in the end, in June 1942, the Germans made an attack. May.
Yeah.
They made an attack on the Gazala line, and they encircled it. And we were cut off. The whole line was cut off. They came round and they got up to, the Germans took Tobruk. So in order to get petrol and food and water, especially water, we used to go at night by road on a route in the dark and make up a convoy and do it. We did it every night.
Oh, really? Did you get attacked then?
Well, not in the night, but if we were late getting out, we got attacked because in the night there would be odd sentries and units would probably pop a few grenades or fire at us, but we got through. One or two vehicles were captured. The Germans knew what we were at, but it was very tricky because there were a lot of minefields up there.
Okay.
But we managed to keep going until the real balloon went up and the Battle of Knightsbridge and all around there, and Tobruk fell.
Rommel was in
yeah.
charge of that area, wasn't he?
Rommel.
Where you guys were, was they fighting on a daily basis?
Oh yes.
What was it like
all day?
What is it like to fight in the desert like that?
Hot, fierce. We did a lot of shelling, mortar fire, rifle and bayonets every day. It quietened down at night, but patrols went out at night, cutting telephone cables and wires and all sorts of dirty tricks, laying mines. But in the end, we were cut off in that Gazala line, and we had to make a break for it. We tried 2 or 3 nights to break out and failed. But one night we just pushed out, and we went towards Egypt, Merseymatruh, and we reached from near Merseymatruh from the coast down south. There was a barbed wire fence, a very big one, and we got through that, and we were relatively safe in front of El Alamein, and we tried 4 nights running to get into El Alamein, but we were driven back each time. There were 3 German panzer divisions, the 21st, the 15th, and the 90th. Those 3 panzer divisions blocked the way every night for us.
Were Allied forces dying when this was happening?
Yes.
Was it fighting? Because I don't think we've really emphasised that, because this period of time was particularly fierce. On the research I've done,
pretty fierce.
I want to know what, because people are going to be listening to this that was in Afghanistan, was in Iraq, was in the Falklands, Northern Ireland, going back. What was it like to be in contact? What was it like to be getting shelled, to be fixing a bayonet?
Pretty awful. There was shelling and tank shelling, shelling us from tanks. A lot of tank battles and terrible scenes with tanks blowing up and with the men still in. The Germans had brought into the desert an anti-aircraft gun, which they used as a land gun, as field artillery. It's an 88 millimeter, the 88, and it was pretty deadly, very, very accurate, and it was used for knocking off British tanks and British vehicles. And you had all that going on in the daytime. The German gunners were pretty hot on knocking out tanks and blowing them up and setting fire to them with armour-piercing shells. But 88 millimeter. It's an anti-aircraft gun, instead of being highly elevated for aircraft, it was brought down as a field gun.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
How many Allied troops are with you? Do you know at this point, just outside of El Alamein? That's right. Was that where you were?
Yes, just outside El Alamein.
Alamein, yeah. So when you was there, how many Allied troops were trying to get into there?
Well, there must have been about four divisions. A lot of Allied troops there, a lot.
20,000. What would the number be? Is it hundreds, or is it thousands, or is it tens of thousands?
I'm just working out. 100,000. Must have been about 100,000.
Really?
But we didn't have the tank. The heavy tanks that we got were rather late in the field. The Grant tank, that was a match for the German Mark III and IV. And then, of course, we came across the Tiger, the German Tiger. But the battle to get back to El Alamein was pretty fierce. And a lot of casualties.
The friends of yours?
And it was right in the hottest part of the year, June, July, coming up to August. It was very, very hot, and the battle was fierce. No doubt about that.
Did you lose friends at this point? Did you lose friends? and comrades at this point?
Yes.
Directly.
Yes, I lost some friends, and some were ill with battle fatigue, and the chances of getting them away were very bleak because we were surrounded. But we managed to get some away at night up round the Brook area. Although the Brook had fallen, we managed to get some away. And I think some were got away by sea, but not in my area. We just had to take them on board on the lorries.
What would battle fatigue be? What would someone who's suffering from battle fatigue? What is it?
Shaking, nervous, shaking, and not fit for battle, really.
Yeah.
Not at all fit for battle. Nervous breakdown, really, and trembling and shaking. Even in that heat, people were... The odd bod you came across he was no good to you. It was only a case for hospital, but getting them away was terrible. But we did get one or two away in my unit, and I can remember right out in the desert one day, coming across a Royal Air Force patrol, armoured car, a Rolls-Royce armoured car with a RAF, and they took two of our casualties for battle fatigue on board, and they managed to get them back into Egypt. What happened to them, I don't know. It wasn't quite a Dunkirk, but it was not far off that.
Yeah.
You know,
to Brook itself, they there was Australians there, Indian, Polish, Brits, and 30,000 prisoners of war got taken just from Tobruk itself. What was the next stage of this for you?
Well, down near Alamein, on June the 28th, it was late at night. I was helping an officer. We were leading a convoy of guns. We were going to try and get a battery of 25-pounders into Alamein. And I was a navigator on that night. And we nearly made it. And we went up a ridge and we dismounted and crawled up to have a look over the other side, and we could see the 21st Panzer Division signs on the vehicles. So we crept back to our lot, and we were going to divert to a slightly different direction. And as we moved off, one of the vehicles stalled, and behind it was a 25-pounder gun, and the barrel of the gun poked through the radiator, and the engine pushed the engine back of a vehicle following, and it caused a traffic jam, and the Germans heard it. They knew what we were up to, and they blocked the way, and I had to go forward with my officer on that convoy to see if we could unblock it, and we managed it. We managed to. We hauled that gun out of that lorry and cleared it. And as we went up the ridge, we had a direct hit from a tank, and it blew our vehicle up.
Mm.
3 of them on board were killed, and I was blown out. And I was on the desert. I got hit in the knee with something. I got some ribs broken. That finger was hanging off.
Oh.
And fortunately, the Germans came out of their tanks, and they hauled me into their dugout, and they hauled me into their dugout, and they bound the MO sewed my finger, that little finger on, and bound my legs up, and he put a big bandage thing right around, one sticky thing around my ribs, and I was alive. Most of my pals were dead, and that German medical officer said to me, "I've done the best." In English, he spoke English. He said, "I've done the best I can for you, Tommy. You do realise now that you are our prisoner of war." So it didn't register really. I was in a bit of pain and a bit grateful that someone had done something in my chest.
Yeah.
And daylight came, and they gave me a mug of roasted acorns, that coffee, and they put me on a vehicle, and they took me to the caves at Bardia, where there were a lot of German wounded and British wounded, and gradually we were taken up the desert as prisoners of war on any old vehicles that were running. And we bypassed Tobruk, and we eventually landed up at Benghazi, where they'd made a POW cage just outside the town, south of the town of Benghazi, out in the open desert. Well, we were told we would be there for 2 or 3 days before we were being taken to Italy. But we were there 4 months in that filthy camp. It was terrible, honestly. We made the best of it, but there was ill sickness. We were out in the desert, no roof, nothing. We had 1 blanket each. We huddled under those at night because it's cold in the desert at night, but during the day we rigged up shelter from the sun with blankets, these odd blankets. And our food for the day, we had a little tin of meat, 50 grams. 1 tin of that between 2 men for 24 hours.
Oh, my.
And a hard British ship's biscuit, as hard as concrete. And what we did, we scraped it with a stone into an old tin and put water on it, mixed it up, and ate it like porridge.
Huh.
It was a terrible ship's biscuit. and the ship's biscuit, and they were full of weevils.
Yeah.
So we had meat and veg.
Some good protein in there.
Yes. But we lived under those conditions for 4 months. There was diphtheria, malaria, scarlet fever, rheumatism, all sorts. Every illness you could think of. The diphtheria was the worst because it's so infectious.
Can you describe the camp in like the actual
in that camp?
Geography of it? Like how were people situated? Was you penned in, or was it just one big?
Oh, we were penned in. It was one big camp, surrounded with a double walk of barbed wire and Italian guards. The Germans handed us over to the Italians there.
Yeah.
Now, in the camp, there was a big dip at one part, and every evening we met. We made our way before twilight to this dip and sat on the ground. And a British officer, padre, who was captured, was living in Benghazi itself under a guard, and he was brought over every evening by the Italians, and we had a short service every evening with him, but we had no hymns. We sang songs. He said, "It's no good having hymns. We feel as if we're deserted here, so we'll have songs." And one or two of the popular songs at the time that were on the radio, we sang in the place of hymns. But that officer, his name was Captain Wright. He was a South African padre. Now, he used to bring in a bit of news because he'd heard the radio over where he was imprisoned with the Italians, the officers' mess, and he used to get a bit of news off the radio, and he'd come out and supposedly preaching to us. The guards didn't know what he was telling. He was telling us a bit of war news. Yeah. How they were doing on the Russian front and all that.
Yeah.
We got it. And it eased our load a bit. It was quite good to see him. We had only one pint of water a day, and it was seawater that had the salt taken out. They had a depot in Benghazi, and the seawater was distilled. And I don't know whether you ever tasted anything like that, but it's very sweet when they take the salt out of the seawater. And it was for the Italian army as well, and the German army. There were a lot of Germans there. And we had all this desalinated water.
Yeah.
But 1 pint a day, that's all. And it was in the middle of the summer that year. Ooh. Temperature about 110, 115. However, after about 4 months there, Montgomery was coming up with his army from Alamein, and we could hear at night, we could hear artillery fire in the distance, like thunder. And we thought, any day now, the British Army will be here. But the Germans gave orders to the Italians to move us. And we were taken to Tripoli, up the coast. A pretty harrowing ride.
Was you in vehicles or was you marched?
We went in lorries and trailers. 50 on the lorry, 50 on the trailer. And we went up to Tripoli and stayed at various spots along the way. On the first week in December, mind you, we were captured in June. We were still in our desert short trousers and open neck shirts.
Yeah.
We were put on a boat across the Medi to Naples. And when we got to Naples, it was in December, in the middle of winter, pouring with rain. And we were soaked to the skin in our desert outfit.
Would you say you were starving?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We were skeletons. We went down to, well, one or two of my pals were weighed, and they were fairly well-built people. And I reckon I was the same size as them, but they were weighed because they had possibly diphtheria coming on. And they were under 6 stone.
Oh.
So I reckon I dropped down to about 6 stone, and I was 11.
Yeah. In 4 months.
I lost about 5 stone on that Benghazi run up the desert.
How long was the boat journey across? How long was the journey across from Africa to...
2.5 days. A terribly rough sea, and we were in the dark hold of the ship down the bottom.
Yeah.
There's no toilet down there. And we were in the dark. The lid was on top of the hold. And on one occasion, there was an occasion each day when they lifted one corner of the lid, and an Italian officer on the boat came and shouted down at us in English that he said, "We're halfway across the Mediterranean. We have been picked up by a British submarine, but I will not sink the boat." He said, "I will hand it over if the submarine surfaces and holds us up by gun with its gun. I will hand over the ship and you to the British. I will not sink the ship, pull the plug." So we gave him 3 hearty cheers for that, and they put the lid back on again.
How was you actually treated by the Italians during the prisoner war camp in Africa? You obviously just mentioned there that this humanitarian brief moment of time as well. Was there things like that throughout?
No, he was unusual. The Italian guards were on the winning side at that moment, and they just made fun of us. They took the mickey out of us. And they were not they were not good at all. In fact, at one or two stops along that road from Tabuk up to Tripoli, Benghazi up to Tripoli, German soldiers were better to us than the Italians. German soldiers who were going on their way down to the front at Alamein. They were better, even would give out a cigarette or two. German cigarettes, Turkish,
yeah,
awful. But the Italians were on the winning side at that time, and they were cocky with it. It was a shame, but there we are. So we got to Naples in pouring rain, but we went into a big Navy place there, and they took our filthy clothes off us in piles, and we had a shower bath and hot water in the middle of the night, and a sheet of paper to wipe yourself with, no towels. And we had to put our old dirty clothes on again.
Yeah.
And they took us outside in the middle of the night, in the pouring rain, with no clothes on, because we couldn't find our clothes. They'd taken them away in heaps, and they were delousing them in a delousing machine. And we were outside after having a hot shower bath in pouring rain in a December night in Italy, in Naples. It's a wonder we didn't all die of pneumonia, but we survived.
What was the feeling like? Was it of suffering? What was the feeling like within the group? Did it slowly get worse? Morale slowly get worse? Were people feeling like it was
British
the end was
soldiers, the British Tommy has a marvellous sense of humour, and we sang songs, we insulted the guards in many ways, and made fun until we got our clothes on. And the next morning, those old army uniforms were taken away from us, our own things, and we were given Italian army uniforms of, I should think, about 1900, with pantaloons and puttees, and on our backs was big red paint triangle and PG, Prigioniero di Guerra, prisoner of war,
okay.
And on the knees big diamonds painted, red paint. But they were warm and funny little side hats.
Yeah.
They were Italian army uniforms of a bygone age, and we had those for about a month.
But you was happy to have them?
Yeah, and they were warm, you see.
Mm.
And a strange shirt. We were given the army shirts. Very strange. And then we moved up from... I went to 4 camps in Italy. We moved up to Italy. And the last camp was near Bologna, at a big camp, a barbed wire camp, organised by the Italian army. Poor rations, bowl of soup a day, and a little brown loaf. And roasted acorns formed the form that was a coffee.
Mm.
With a coffee essence into it. And we were very fortunate there. We had 1 or 2 International Red Cross parcels, one between 10 men. So we had 1 or 2 tasty little things, a tin of meat roll between 10 men. You only got a slice.
Yeah. I mean, you showed me with your hands there the size of it.
Yeah,
it's the size of a small kind of kilo parcel between 10 people.
Yeah, I mean, 10 men. It was only like a shoebox.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of powdered milk in there, a bar of sugar, a little packet of tea. So we could, with a bit of hot water, we could have a little brew up. We got these occasionally, these parcels from the International Red Cross. They were mostly from Scotland and Canada and China and places like that. Mm. And Now, in that camp near Bologna, I noticed that I was having difficulty in walking. And my feet, as I walked, my feet sort of flopped.
Yeah.
And everybody knew I was coming. They said, here he comes. And in the end, after about a fortnight, I could only get to the awful toilets there, slit trench. I could only get there by my arms round the shoulders of a couple of fellas to get to the toilet, to walk about the camp. And I had to report sick. Well, there was a British doctor in the camp, living in the Italian quarters. He's a medical officer, but he had no medicine.
Mm.
He had a thermometer, which he could tell you temperature, but he had one or two little pills, but nothing. He couldn't do anything. And I was taken to him, and he was quite concerned about my feet. And he arranged for me to be taken into the Italian garrison there, where the Italian soldiers were, because they had an MO. And when this little Captain Medico, when he saw me, he was horrified. And he ran the rule over me.
Why was he horrified?
He said, you must go to hospital. Now, there's no hospital in the camp. They took me about 3 miles away into town where the Italians had, it was a big hospital, a civilian hospital, but one area of it in the corner was wired off, and Italian soldiers were guarding it. There was a ward there for about 12 prisoners of war under guard, 6 medicals, 6 surgicals. And they were busy the whole time, backwards and forwards from the camp. People with hernia, people with appendicitis, and all sorts of things like that. But also people suffering from heart trouble and things. And the medicals, and I was put in the medical ward because I was paralysed from here to toes and
So
both legs.
Your knee to your toe.
I lost the use of my legs. And in the end, it was decided that it was through malnutrition, starvation. And an Italian army doctor was working, a young one, he was working in the big hospital, maternity and all that, there, all the civilians. But he came early morning and late at night into the POW place to see how we were getting on. And so he told me through an interpreter, after a day or two, he said, your legs, I've come across this before in Abyssinia, with our army in Abyssinia. And he said, I've worked out a cure. Yeah. And he said, I am quite willing to try it on you, but he said, I wouldn't do it unless you get permission from a British officer, because it might not work. But I have worked it successfully on one or two Italian soldiers in Abyssinia. So that British soldier officer was brought to me, and we had a discussion about it with the Italian. And the British officer said to me, "Well, I think you've got nothing to lose." He said, "You ain't going to walk again." And he said, if the war ends, you'll be going home. You'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. So you go for it. So I said I'd go for it. Now the treatment was chronic. It was painful. It was terrible.
What was it?
Well, I had some lumbar puncture needles when they stick in your back, about that long. But I had them put in the groins, in here, each side. Now, they didn't have any serum at all to put in there. But he got in touch with the International Red Cross. And they were in Switzerland. And they sent 2 files, about that long, of stuff which looked like mustard, yellow. And he pumped this into me, each side, in the lymphatic gland. And he said, if this works in about 2 weeks' time, you'll feel something in your legs. And I did.
What was it? What was it that went in? What was it that he pumped in?
No idea. No idea.
A vitamin or something like that, maybe?
It could have been cyanide. But I've got a feeling that it might be something in the Novocaine, the sort of thing that dentists use.
Right.
But this was yellow. Now, one morning, I felt a tingling in my toes on one foot, and it was strange. And I found it. And now, at 6 o'clock every morning, 3 nuns used to come into that hospital and help to wash us. And on that morning I had that tingling. I said to one of the nuns, the young one, I said, my foot is coming to life. Oh, God. She ran and got the doctor, and he came, and he stuck a pin or needle in my toe. And I went, oh. He said, it's working, it's working. And they had a celebration. They fetched the priest. The nuns were on their knees at my bed, and the doctor, the doctor, he was going balmy, and but in no time it was all round the world, all round the civilian ward, that a miracle had been performed.
Yeah.
Tommaso, they all call me Tommy. Tommaso is working.
Yeah.
Oh, Deo grazie. Oh, it was, and gradually, the whole feet came to life. It was wonderful.
Was you still skinny at this point? Was you still malnourished? Was you still malnourished? Was you still skinny? Was you still starving?
Well, yeah, I was still skinny, yes, because we had no more food in hospital than we did in the camp. But the only thing was that we got it on an enamel plate.
In hospital?
In hospital, yeah.
Presented differently.
Yeah, because on one Sunday, there was a piece of meat on the plate. It was only about that big.
The size of 2 fingers.
There, on the plate. And I said to the nun, the one who spoke English, a young nun, I said, is this carne? Is this a dog?
Mm.
He said, no. Gattino, kitten.
Oh.
That was a joke.
Yeah.
I said, well, what meat is that? Non lo so. I don't know. Yeah. So, but, we didn't get any extra food in the hospital.
What?
But we did get some bits and pieces out of medical parcels that the Red Cross sent to the hospital. And there was baby food in it for milking mothers and things. So because we eat it with a spoon raw, get it down.
Yeah.
And B-Max, which looked like sawdust. Get that down there.
What is starvation like?
Painful. God, your guts ache. But the body does get used to it, but you lose so much flesh. However, my treatment on my legs was working, and the doctor, the tenente, a lieutenant, who did it, he had a rather posh name, Antonino Alessi. He was a lieutenant in the Italian Army Medical Corps. I'll tell you a little bit about him later. Now, the day came when Mussolini was debagged and thrown out. He was like Hitler. He's his mate. And now Benito Mussolini ran fascist Italy, but he was overturned in July that year.
What year was that?
He had to flee to Germany to his mate.
What year was that, Dennis?
43.
Right.
Now, the Italians went balmy because Mussolini had been debagged, and the King of Italy took over again, Vittorio Emanuele. Now, they had a celebration that day that Italy went mad, and even the nuns made us a little cake out of horse chestnuts, not horse chestnuts.
Yeah.
They had no flour. They ground up some chibis, chestnuts, and used that as flour, and they made a little cake in our ward for us to celebrate. But Italy went mad, and I went into the bathroom on two sticks. I was walking then. I went into the bathroom across the way, looked through the great big glass windows out onto the road, and I saw a procession of people with flags going along the road, and all the Italians were all singing, and a horse was pulling the wagon it was a big wooden tank full of around like a big cylinder, big thing, and it was full of the pumpings out of the toilets, like the drains. It was full of shit, and it was going along the road in this procession, all these people singing round it, but someone had written on the side of it, "Viva il Re, long live the king," on the shit cart. And I went and fetched the doctor, Leslie. I said, look, he said, that is Italian humour.
Is it?
Yeah. Anyway, I was found fit to go back to camp. Now, something rather unusual happened. The Germans had entered Italy because Mussolini had been debagged, and they were afraid they didn't want the king of Italy to take over. He had already taken over. But Marshal Badoglio from the army had more or less taken over. And he was friendly with the king. Now, I had to get my clothes on again, and my old Italian suit and everything. And I got dressed up, and I had to go down to the porch to await the lorry that was going back to the camp to take me back to camp. And I stood on the step, an Italian soldier that side of me and a German soldier that side of me, waiting in case I ran away. And while I was waiting there, those three nuns who'd been nursing us, helping us, they came down and they pushed the Italian soldier away. And they stood next to me. Two of the old ones, they pushed the German soldier away. Two of the old ones stood that side of me, and the young 18-year-old nun stood this side of me. And she was fiddling with her scissors. She had the scissors on her belt, and she was cutting away at something. And she put my hand over, and she clasped something in my hand like that. Now, for an Italian woman at that time to be holding hands with an English soldier prisoner was strongly verboten. To do it with any emotion, a nun even would be defrocked.
Oh, really?
But she was holding my hand there, and there was something in there. When I opened it, it was a crucifix off her belt
Amazing.
with a piece of blue silk. I wish I'd brought it along. I've got it at home.
Oh, you've still got it?
Yeah, I've got it. I said to her, you take it. You might need it with the Germans here. She said, no. You have it. She said, you might need it where you're going. I said, am I going to Germany? Yes, she said, he's going to take you. So I took her scissors and I cut the lining in my dirty old jacket down here, and I poked the crucifix in there and I held it. And for the rest of my POW life, for the next 2.5 years, 2 years, I was, well, we were all searched morning, noon and night by the Germans. You had to fling a jacket open. And I did it, and never once did a German soldier want me to open my hands. They missed it. I was holding the crucifix. It's in my bedroom at home. I got it home. And I said to that little nun, I'm sure you'll need this more than I. No. She said, no. She said, wir sind alle Kinder des Gottes. we're all children of God. I said, him and you? And the German soldier says, yes. We're all children of God. I said, so I have this. And I brought it home.
Where did you go from Italy? So you was in the north of Italy.
Yes, we went by train, cattle trucks. We went by cattle trucks up to the Brenner Pass, and we stopped in an air raid in the Brenner Pass at Bolzano, and we found that we could lever part of the floor of the truck up, and several of us got out on the track. We're in the middle of an air raid, in the blackout, and the German the platform was covered in German soldiers moving down south, the regiment, and they had dogs, and they got wind that prisoners were getting out of the truck, so they'd put the dogs on us.
Oh.
So we had to get back in. Instead of 40 of us being in there, they piled us in trucks that had got the floorboards up. So we went for the rest of the way, 80 in a truck inside. That wasn't very pleasant because there was no means of relieving oneself. We arrived at Munich in a bit of a stinking state.
Did you throughout this time, how long had you been prisoner of war now? About 6 months? More? No, more.
Yeah, more.
Yeah.
Yes. But at any rate, we moved on from Munich until we went to Leipzig, and we went to a camp on the River Elbe at Torgau. That's where later in the war, where the British, Americans, and the Russians met. The two armies met at Torgau on the Elbe. We didn't know it then, but we were only there a week, and we were sent in parties, working parties, to different camps round Dresden. And I went to Dresden, and because I was an NCO, I was put in charge of 45 of my pals in a brickworks, making house bricks in the kilns in Dresden. Dresden's famous for China, of course. The Dresden Meissen is just up the Elbe. And we worked in the brick fields. We made bricks. We worked making concrete pipes. We worked on some digging trenches for things. We worked on the railway, working on railway track sleepers. And we worked also in the railway, unloading sacks and sacks of parcels and mails for the German post office, and redirecting them to different trucks for different trains going to different parts of Germany. And that's where we changed some labels over, so that a truck full of parcels due to go to Cologne would land up in miles away. So we got rumbled in that in the end, and the threats of shootings and whatnot.
Is that because that would have been classed as sabotage?
Oh, it was, yeah. It was a terrible sabotage.
And then the Germans used to shoot saboteurs, didn't
Oh, yeah. But we had some fingerprints taken, you see. And they found out there was some of these sacks arrived in the wrong place. They found on the labels fingerprints, and they tracked it back to Dresden.
Ugh.
But they didn't track it down to individuals.
Had you been with the same group of people since Africa, or had you been broken up and moved about? The prisoners of war you was with, the guys you were with?
No, I was with those 45 most of the time. We did get a split once, but we got together again. And the strange thing was that I came home with some of them. I got them back. Now, I could speak a fair amount of German at that time, so I was very useful to the Germans in getting their orders directed to the men, and I was also very useful in making sure that the Germans didn't take it out of us too much. You see, if in camps where the prisoners didn't understand the language, the Jerrys made hell on earth for them, you see. Well, they tried it out on us, but I was up to it, and I'd been a prisoner longer than my mates, so I knew the ropes a bit, and I used to answer the Germans back. They were not doing that. We'll do it our way.
Had you started a union?
But yeah, well, I got kicked and beaten and all sorts of. I got whipped in the face with a horse whip for answering a German officer back. But it didn't matter because I got my way.
Yeah.
With them, and it proved useful, but it was a rather trying time.
Were the POWs a big asset for the German kind of war machine at that point? I suppose it was coming. What year are we in now?
That's coming up to 43, 44.
Okay, so
things were going bad for the Germans on the Russian front.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that some of the things we did, little bits of sabotage, had an effect in because other units doing the same. We smashed every electric light bulb we could see.
Oh, really?
By twisting them.
Yeah.
They didn't look as if they were damaged, but they didn't work anymore. Every one we could see.
Yeah. So just these small things that the Allied POWs were doing just to make it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
Did you get
cut telephone wire?
Really?
To do all sorts.
At this point, was it like, well, if we get shot, we get shot? What was the feeling like? Or did you feel like you were part of the war effort?
Yeah, yes. We weren't being brave British soldiers, but we were doing our little bit. We couldn't do much, but what little bit we did often gummed up the works for them. For instance, when I was in charge of those 45, I used to, if someone said, I've got a bit of a sore throat coming on, and have you got any old salt so I can have a gargle? So we'd have some crystal salt. So I would say to the commandant, we've got a throat infection in the camp. Now, they didn't like that. They were frightened of throat things because of diphtheria.
Ah, right, okay.
You see, so, right, you must take him into Dresden to the hospital and see the German MO. Well, it meant I'd have to take that man, so I could speak a bit of German for him, and the guard had to go with us. And the guards, it'd be on his day off. So he'd be cursing like mad.
Yeah.
You see, that's the sort of thing we did.
Just to mess them about.
Yeah,
To empower yourself as much as possible.
Put a spike in the wheel.
Yeah.
You see, and any damage. You know, if you get hold of an electric light bulb and turn it the wrong way, you could push it up and break its seal, and it's still there.
Yeah, yeah.
So we did that everywhere we went. Even when we went down to the sick bay.
How old are you now? About 23? Are you 23 at this time then when you're in Dresden?
Yeah, I was 24.
24.
Yeah. And I had 45 prisoners. And they were mostly caught in North Africa and in the invasion of Italy, Sicily and Italy. They hadn't been prisoners as long as I had.
Yeah.
So,
were you hearing snippets about the war going on? Could you get
yes.
bits of radio? And
well, what used to happen was that if I knew the British officer MO. Down in Dresden, on one of the main roads into the town, there was an old beer garden with an old-fashioned cinema, and it was used for housing sick prisoners. There were no beds; there was straw on the floor. If you were unwell and went into his sick bay, you dossed down on the straw. And but I got friendly with him, Captain Lusk. He was a New Zealander, and I got friendly with him. So I used to take people occasionally on a false errand down there to see the doctor with a guard, under guard, and have a session with him, and I'd get a bit of news because he used to pick up a bit of news on the radio from the German guards. He was under guard, but yeah, one Sunday, one of my boys was very, very ill. Very ill. And he terrible pain in the stomach. And I went to we were locked in at night, of course. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock rather, I kept banging on the door for a guard to come. Eventually, he came and opened the door. What's wrong? What do you want? I said, I want the doctor. No good. I said, I want the commandant then. No good. Well, he shut the door and locked it again. But an hour later, my banging, it must have been heard all over the place. And he opened up and he took me to the commandant. And I got in the office. I said, one of my boys, Hartnell, is very ill. We need to get to Dr. Lusk down in the town. No. The commandant said, you can't go because I can't afford a sentry to go with you. Well, there was a lot of argument over this. A lot. I said, while we're arguing with this Herr Commandant, I said, Hartnell is very ill. And while we're arguing, he's getting worse. If he dies, his death will be on my hands and yours. He said, you can't go. You can't go. I haven't got a sentry available. Well, I suppose that was true. But I mean, in the British Army, we'd have found somebody. Mm. But they didn't. So I said to him, if you open the if you open the gates here, I'll walk out. I'll walk down the hill. It was about 1.5 miles. I said, I'll walk down the hill and get Helpman Captain Lusk to come. Oh, he says, it's impossible. I said, well, Hartnell dies, you and I will be responsible. And we went on like that. And I went back into my hut. He sent me off. Mm. And there we were with this fellow. Oh, no, his knees up. Anyway, a sentry came into the room and said, come with me. I went into the commandant and he said to me, I have typed out a pass and which I'm going to open the gate and let you go and get Captain Lusk. But he said, you must sign this piece ticket. I said, what is it? He said, read it. And it was a promise that I would go out, I would not escape. I said, I can't sign that. Why? Your friend will die. I said, I can't sign that. I'm not allowed as a prisoner of war to sign that sort of document. I said, your German soldiers in England would not be asked to sign a piece of paper like that, and I cannot sign that paper because under the military, I can't sign. He looked at me, and I thought he was going to get his revolver out. I said, I can't sign it. I can't sign it. I won't sign it. I'm not asking permission. That I won't escape. Mm. He said, had you got it in mind to escape? I said, it doesn't enter into it here. I said, I cannot escape. I cannot promise not to escape. I can't sign it. He said, your friend will die. I said, well, you'll be part of the death. He said, get out. I went out to that hut. I was in a bit of a dilemma. And before I got back to my hut, a German soldier came up, called out to me, come back. I went in the office, and that commandant said to the soldier, go to the gate, unlock it. And he said to me, get on your way. Mm. I said, no signing, no. He said, it's there in the bin. And I walked out of that camp, down that hill, and the birds were singing, And I thought, I'm free. I'm actually outside a camp. And I walked down there and I got to that old cinema and I banged on the door and the German soldier opened the door and he nearly had a fit. He went mad. And while I said, no, just let it go. I want Captain Lusk. And I went and Lusk was having a shave. He said, where's your guard? I said, back at the camp. I've walked out. I said, the commandant's let me come out. I said, I'll tell you about it. He said, I'll get me jacket on. Come on, let's go. And we walked up the hill back to our camp. And he said, isn't it marvellous? He said, the people are saying good morning to us. Oh. Nobody's arresting us. Mm. And we got back into camp and he decided, he got on the phone in the office, did Lusk, and they decided we got a wheelbarrow, we put a blanket in the wheelbarrow, we put Matey in it, poor boy, and we wheeled him all the way into Dresden to the Dresden Army Barracks, where they operated on him immediately, and he died on the operating table. He didn't survive. And I said to Captain Lusk, you were at the operation. Oh yes, he said, they allowed me to witness. They didn't kill him. So I said to him, what was it? He said, it wasn't a duodenal ulcer. He said it was a gastric ulcer and it had burst. Mm. I said, so all the delays helped. Well, he said they probably contributed towards it, but he said he was very ill. He said, now you've got a nice job on your hands, you've got to bury him. So I arranged with through the commandant, I arranged with a local undertaker in Dresden, and he was just like old man Steptoe, with a funny old battered hat on, and he was just like him. Later in life I thought, I've seen you before. And I carried it, I ordered a funeral, and we had a little military funeral in a cemetery up in the Pines. And some of four prisoners from his regiment we found, they carried his little coffin and we buried it. And 4 German guards came and they fired shots over the grave. Mm. They're good at funerals, the Germans. And so we left Billy. When we had to get out of Dresden, when the Russians arrived on the outskirts of Dresden, we had to walk over the hills into Czechoslovakia, and a long walk, and living off the land with the guards. We're under guard. And, well, to cut the long story short, we roamed the countryside to get away from the Russians, but they caught up on us. And the German guards threw their uniforms away and their rifles away, and we were free.
Before we get there, because Dresden, when I hear the words Dresden, I think of a real stain in our history, which is the bombing of Dresden.
Oh yeah, we were there when we were there the night it was bombed.
Just for those that don't know, because it doesn't really get. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, it certainly wasn't something we spoke about in history lessons. But over a course of a couple of days, and one in particular day in February of 1945, so near the end of the war,
13th of February.
Yeah, 1945.
Yeah.
The British and the Americans dropped nearly 4,000 tons of explosive and incendiary devices into Dresden.
On the night raid, the RAF did the night raid. They dropped tons and tons of firebombs, not HE, but at midday the next day, about 800 flying fortresses and whatnot came. The Americans came at midday in the winter sunshine, and they dropped tons of high explosives over the fires that the RAF had started the night before. I think there were 850 British RAF planes came, and they dropped the chandeliers that lit up the place. We were working down the railway at the time. We had to escape with the guards back to our camp up the road, and we had built a temporary sort of shelter.
Can I because it's a really important part of this conversation for me, just to understand it a little bit more. That the night before, when the first kind of wave came in, the first bombing raid, they dropped the incendiary devices.
Yeah.
So essentially napalm.
Oh no, nothing like that.
But it was enough. Sorry, I'm trying to just think it in my head what it would be. So, but it was flames, wasn't it? It was incendiary.
Just ordinary firebombs.
Firebombs, right? Okay.
Yeah, incendiary bombs.
Yeah.
They dropped thousands of them.
Mm.
But no high explosive, not from the RAF that
Just
night.
fire.
Just fire. The fire bombs were bouncing off everything.
Was you there seeing it when it was happening?
Oh yes, they were in the street. You could kick them.
Yeah.
We made our way back to camp. We didn't have far to go. We went along the railway track. We couldn't go out in the road from the camp, from the where we were working on the railway that night. So we went along the track and then scrambled up a bank and the guard was with us. We got a couple of guards with us, and they were very shirty about going back to camp because they get into trouble. Mm. So when they saw the conflagration behind us, the city bursting into flames, they realised that camp was the best place. So we went back and we knocked on the door to go in, knocked on the gate.
Did you see when the fire was taking up? Because
the whole sky was lit up.
Did it create what's called? Because I've read about it.
Yeah.
It created a firestorm, which it's essentially cold air gets sucked into
Luftdruck. Yeah.
And then gale force winds start coming in because of the intensity of the fire.
Oh yeah, the firestorm. You could see it went up to the high heavens.
25,000 or up to 25,000 people died in those raids.
I would say more, even more than that.
Okay.
But that was a firebomb night. That was at 10 o'clock at night. And they were only over less than an hour. They did the job. And they flew home. And at one stage we could see the planes reflecting from the fire. You could see the bombers. The next day, at midday, the hand sirens went again, and we couldn't go down into the city because it was still raging. And we suddenly saw the sky was full of aeroplanes, and they were all American. And there were 10 waves of 80 planes. It came, and they dropped high explosive all across the fires in the city. They blew the place to bits.
Mm.
It was a terrific raid. And, well, I suppose it came under the class of 1,000 bomber raids, about 800. And a few days later, when we were out in the fields over in Czechoslovakia, later on, when the Russians were on the way, there was a daylight raid with Americans, and they went over to the big railway junction at Pirna, which was in Czechoslovakia, actually, Bohemia.
So directly south of Dresden.
It blocked all the road and railway into Dresden or out of it. So,
is this all around the same time? This February?
Yeah. And we were living on the land at that time. But there, we walked and walked away from the Russians, but the Germans who were guarding us, with us, they didn't realise that the Russians were encircling us. And we came to a forest one afternoon, and we got into the forest amongst the pine trees, and the German captain who was in charge of all the prison camps in Dresden, his name was Captain Riedel, an old boy. He fought in the Great War, and he called the likes of me, leaders of the different parties of prisoners. There were about 10 of us. We stood round him, and he said, "The war is over." And we couldn't quite believe it. And he said, "By midnight tonight, the war will really be over and you will be free." Now, one of his sergeant majors, who was a bit of a swine to us, he refused to believe the war was over. And he argued with Captain Riedel. Now, for a German soldier to argue with an officer in the German army was unheard of. You never argued. If he told you to jump off the cliffs of Dover, you did it. Now, this sergeant major, he was hated by us, and he hated us. And I was standing quite near him, like this, in that group. And he stood to attention, and he said to Captain Riedel, "I will not obey your command." Because Riedel had said, by midnight you will be free and you can go your own way, make your way home. And this captain, this sergeant major said, I will not give that order to any of the prisoners. They are prisoners of war, and they will be prisoners of war to the end of time or something, he said. And Riedel said to him, "You will obey me." And the sergeant major said, "I will not obey you." And he stood at attention in front of Captain Riedel. He said, "Shoot me. Shoot me." And Riedel got his revolver out. And this sergeant major said, "Shoot me, now," immediately. I could see the poor old captain, he was shaking. And I put my hand out and I took his revolver out of his hand and I handed it to a young German officer. I said, take this. And Captain Riedel slumped down by the foot of a tree. His hat fell off and he burst into tears. He said, my country is finished and I am finished. And with one of my mates, we lifted him up and said, gave him his hat and said, Captain Riedel, you're still a German soldier. And we're British soldiers. You're still in charge of us until midnight. No, he said no. And he turned to two officers, young officers, he said, take me away. And they took him away into the forest. I don't know what happened to him. Mm. He certainly didn't shoot himself because his revolver. I emptied it. I shook the magazine out. I emptied it.
Was this in the May?
Hmm?
Was this May then? In the May? In the month of May? Is this when this happened?
Yes.
So it was VE Day?
It was the end of the war.
Yeah.
And there were several of us, about 10 of us, leaders of groups of prisoners, working camps, you see. Mm. And I said to Jimmy Ellis, one of my pals, I said, Jimmy, let's get the boys out of here. Let's go home. Mm. And we started walking. We walked
west.
The west. And my pals said to me the next morning, we slept the night in a barn because we were exhausted. And the next morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, we all got out and freshened ourselves under a pump. And my lads said to me, what are we going to do? I said, well, I'm going to walk to France. What? It's thousands of miles. I said, no, it's not. It is about 1,000, but I'm going to walk to France. We're free. I said, but we're going home. I said, it doesn't matter how long it'll take us. We get food along the way. Mm. And they said, well, the German people haven't got no food to give us. I said, well, we'll pinch it. We'll find it in farms and places. We'll exist. And we started walking, and we walked a long way. We got into Bavaria, just into Bavaria, and came across the American army. Mm. They gave us food straight away and medical supplies and all sorts. And they took us by road to Nuremberg, which was in the ruins. Mm. And we spent a night around a big bonfire we made in a field, on the airfield. And when we dozed and woke up next morning, we looked, and the whole runway was full of Dakota aircraft. Mm. And we piled into those, and they flew us to Brussels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and when we got to Brussels, we managed to get into a barracks, and we had a shower bath and cleaned up a bit, and we had some soup and sausages and whatnot, and the Yankees fed well, and we went to bed, lie down. Next morning early, we got roused up, and the Americans took us in lorries on the other side of Brussels, where the Battle of Waterloo was fought, on the big mound. over that side to an RAF depot, and they piled us into any old aircraft that was there. I got into a Lancaster bomber, and they flew us home. We landed in Oxford.
What was it like then? Was it surreal?
It was pouring with rain.
Was it?
Yes.
Welcome home.
It was pouring with rain, but it was real. I had a very, because my legs was beginning to show signs of weakness again. I was lifted up through the bomb bay into the blister on the back of the bomber where the wireless operator was. And they were Australians. It's an Australian crew, and the wireless operator. I said when we took off, I said, "Where were we heading for?" He said, "Just Blighty." I said, "Oh, we go." No. He said, I can't tell you where we're going." So I said, "What? Why?" He said, "Well, there are some mad brain Luftwaffe pilots about who won't believe the war has ended, and they're just likely to have a go at us. That's why these Spitfires are flying above us." He said, "We've got to cover Spitfires." So we're escorted across Germany. And at one stage, I looked down out of my blister down below. I said to this wireless operator, "I know where we are now." "Oh, do you?" "Yeah." I said, "That's Cologne Cathedral." Down there on the Rhine. Look, you can see the river. There's the cathedral. And he got on the radio to the pilot, and he said, "Do you want to rest?" "Why?" He said, "Well, there's a geezer in here." He said he could take over the plane. He knows where we are. Yeah. So, as we left Cologne, we went and we went on over the channel. I said, "Well, that's Deal down there." And as we came around, I said, "Well, there's Margate, Ramsgate and Margate." I said, "Southend Pier." He said, "We're supposed to be secret." But we eventually went right round North London, and we went over Runnymede. I said to this chap, I said, "Ask the pilot if he could put down on the field down there, could I get a bus home for me?" So he laughed about that. He said, "What, here?" I said, "Yes, that's Runnymede down there." And I said, "The Thames goes through Staines." I said, I live over there." So, but we went to Oxford, to a little landing ground just outside Oxford, and we landed there in pouring rain. I said to the boys, 8 of those boys of the 45, they came, I got them home, they came with me. And I said to them, we are well and truly in England, boys. It's pouring with rain." And we were met at the plane by 8 WAF girls, RAF girls, with lorries, and they took us over to a hangar where we had bread and cheese sandwiches about that thick, and pickles, and mugs of tea.
What was you like? What did you look like compared to the soldiers that weren't captured, the non-POWs?
Well, we looked a bit ragged, a bit thin, but although it was hot weather when we arrived, it was May. It was hot weather. We had to put heavy pullovers on. We had army clothes available, and we put sometimes two pullovers on to keep warm. But we went to a little camp out in Chalfont, St Giles, and we got cleaned up. We had a wonderful organisation. We had a medical, teeth, haircuts and bars and feet looked at, and everything was checked medically and everything. And we saw the paymaster who got money, ration cards, everything we needed, new uniforms, even so far as the medal ribbons was put on.
Oh, really?
All that. And we were there three or 4 days, and the morning came when we were taken by lorry to Beaconsfield station and put on a train for London.
You went to Leckensfield?
Beaconsfield.
Beaconsfield. Yeah.
Beaconsfield.
Yeah. Beaconsfield.
We went, and there was a train there for us. And we went into Marylebone Station, and when we got there, the other trains had come in with prisoners of war on, and the post office had lined up lots of post office vans with seats in for this purpose, and we were taken to our termini. Now I went in one for Waterloo. And that one there was for Fenchurch Street. That one was for Walthamstow or somewhere. And London Bridge. I went to Waterloo. And with one of my pals. and when we got to Waterloo Station, we were amazed. As we got out of we were lifted out. And we had a kit bag with us. Each one had a kit bag with some clutter in it. And there's a company of Grenadier Guards there, and they, each one of us had someone to carry our kit bag, a guardsman, and they took us to the indicator board to get our station. I said to mine, I said, station, platform number 1 for me, Shepperton. Do you know? I said, yes, I know. There it goes there. And we went down there, and there it was, Shepperton.
Was it? What was it like getting back home? Was the family there when you got
my
there?
girlfriend she hadn't seen me for 4 years.
You still had a girlfriend?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. She did a lot for my family while I was a prisoner with the Red Cross and with the army.
Did they know if you were still alive?
She dedicated herself to looking after my affairs. She couldn't wait until I got home. Oh yeah, we got married. We got it. We didn't get married that year. We got engaged soon after I got home, and then we waited a year. I said I'll wait until I put on some flesh, and make sure I'm not ill.
Yeah,
because a lot of TB about for people like us. And oh yeah, she was waiting. I got on a train at Waterloo, and I went. I looked out all the way down the line to Sunbury, and when I got to Sunbury Station, he was there, and we'd sent telegrams in that camp. Telegrams to our families had already been made out. All we had to do was put the address on and sign it. And it just said simply, I have arrived safely in England and will be with you in 2 or 3 days.
Oh.
And
Had there been no contact then throughout the time he was a prisoner of war?
oh yes, she'd written.
Oh, so you could still get letters through?
Oh
for
yes,
the Red Cross?
Yeah, the Red Cross letters.
Right.
They used to take about 3 or 4 months to get to you. So if
We complain now if our emails
I know. You see, if she wrote and told me that old Mrs. Hedges up the road had died, you remember her? Yeah, but when I'd got it, she'd been dead in bed.
for 3 months.
Yeah, and things like that. And there was funny episode in the camp in Dresden. We were not allowed to have photographs from home. That was forbidden. If anyone sent you a photograph, it went to a special place in Berlin somewhere, and they were afraid that between the photograph itself and its backing, there might be a message code. So that was strongly forbidden. Now, my girlfriend was able in England at that time, when there were no films about any, you couldn't buy a film, but she was able to get a photograph because her father worked in a government laboratory where they did a lot of photographs. And so she bought some stuff, mixed up some developing stuff, and they managed to get a photograph. And my girlfriend used to go under the stairs and develop these photographs. They had a plate camera at home, and she photographed my cousin I was brought up with, who had a baby. And the little baby was about 3 or 4 months old. And my father-in-law-to-be, he took, with their old plate camera, he took a photograph of my cousin and her baby. And my wife printed this. My girlfriend, she printed it, and she sent it in a letter to me. And it arrived in the camp in Dresden, and the commandant got hold of it, and he had it on his desk, and he sent for me. And I could see it was a photograph. He had his hand on this thing. And I said to, "You called for me, Commandant." "Yes." He said, "I've got something here which is addressed to you, but you're not allowed to have it." I said, "Oh, is it a letter?" "No," he said, "it is a photograph." And he said, "It's under my hand." He said, "You know it's against the rules for British people to send photographs." I said, "Yes, but I have no control over that. I can't." "That's true," he said. "So this is going into the waste bin." I said, "Well, thank you for telling me." He said, "Does it worry you that you can't have that photograph?" I said, "No, I didn't know it was coming. Presumably I've got a letter that will tell me that the photograph has been sent." He said, "That's as may be." And he looked at the photograph. this is where he slipped up. He said, "It's a nice photograph." He said, "It is a photograph of your wife and your baby." I played along with it. I said, "Oh, and I can't see it." No. He said, "I'm going to give it to you. Put it in your locker in the brickworks. And if there's an inspection of lockers by the German army, make sure that's not seen." He said, "Can you cover it with something?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm not supposed to talk to you like this," but he said, "I have got a son, and he is badly wounded in Italy in the German army. And if his wife and baby appeared to him on the photograph, I would hoped, if he's a prisoner of war, that the British would have let him have it." So he said, "You can have this." It wasn't my wife and baby at all.
The sentiments
I wasn't
there.
even married.
Yeah, the sentiments there, though, isn't it? And there's that compassion that was shown.
Well,
in
they
that
didn't.
instance.
They didn't know who it was. It was he who said it was my wife and baby.
It almost sounded like it was to make him feel better about
He
his
was
son.
He was trying to be clever.
Do you think? I think he was. He sounds well. He was there. It sounds very much like he was trying to look after himself, and by doing that act to you, he was being very compassionate to his son as well.
Son, yeah. Oh yes, yeah.
What was your what was your opinions of the Germans and the Italians in the years after the war?
Well, I went to Germany after the war, and I was treated very well by the Germans. And we linked up with the German family, and we're still linked up with them. And we're on about the fourth generation now of them. And a complete friendship. Now, that was the Germans. I've been over to Germany. My daughter goes over frequently, and the Germans come over here for holidays and various family things. That same family. But the Italian side of it was rather strange, because you see an Italian army officer got me walking again. Now, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, a family in Cumbria I know, the son goes to Italy on holidays, and he is engaged to an Italian nurse at a hospital in Milan. And I happened to be talking to them one day at home, and I told them about Dr. Alessi and my legs. And he told his fiancée, who's an Italian nurse in Milan, about my legs. And she went to a shop. She went somewhere in Milan, and she contacted the family of that doctor in a shop. and they gave her a box of chocolates from a factory in that town in Milan for me. And I had the chocolate at home with the family. Now, she said that she had found the family of that doctor. And it was in Rome. And the family phoned me up. A lady phoned me up one day, and in English, I could tell she was Spanish or Italian by her dialect, but she spoke English. And she said, I am the daughter of Dr. Antonino Alessi, who performed operations on your legs in Bologna during the Second World War. And my father is now dead, but I've got 2 sisters and a brother. We're all medicos. My brother actually is a vet. We would like you to come to Italy and have a holiday with us so that we can find out all about our father, what he did for you. Think about it and let us know. My telephone number is in Rome is this, they gave me. But I said to her, I don't think I'll be able to make it because I'm close on 100 years old. And also my legs that your father saved, my legs are beginning to feel that trouble coming back. I can't walk very far. So she rang me back a little while later and she said, I do appreciate what you've said. I'm making arrangements with the Italian embassy in London for me to come to England and to stay in a hotel and for them to send a car down to you where you live on the River Thames and take you up, and so we can have lunch at the embassy together and hear all about my father. Well, that wasn't long ago, and I've not heard about this car coming yet.
Oh, really?
So it probably never happened.
Yeah.
But wasn't it strange?
Yeah, amazing.
He said, my father has died. He died in 1994. And she said, my brother has just retired. He's the vet. He's 74. So I reckon that she would be about 68.
But let us know. Let us know if that.
Yeah. But wasn't it strange?
It'd be fascinating. Yeah. What's because you saw the early part of the war, you know, especially around, you know, with Dunkirk and then the war in northern Africa.
Yeah.
And then of course spending the years you did as a POW. What did you learn from it? What did you learn from all this, if anything?
Well, I had to renew my life. I had to rebuild my life. And you see, I'd been a clerk in a building outfit, but I could have gone back there. But I thought more seriously about it, and I decided that I'd like to work in local government or in central government in some way. So I got in touch with the army education people, and I said, I'm willing to take a course. Can you help me in any way? And I said, I'd like to take a course which would permit me to go into the examination room for the civil service. I mean, you had to have 6 O-levels to get into the examination room. So the army reply was, "We will help you." And they got all the books and papers, and I did a correspondence course to get my O-levels, and the army paid for it. I only had to pay my fare to go to 1 or 2 meetings, lectures, but I passed with an A1 pass to get into the civil service. So I've been a civil servant. I was a civil servant for 40 years. And
I mean, you really progressed afterwards. Did you take life? Did you grab hold of life more? Do you feel like you love life? What's the more emotional side of it? Because you saw some horrors. You know, whether that's Dresden, whether that is starvation.
no, that didn't rebound on me at all. What rebounded on me about in the year after I came home, was building up my body again, and I was quite ill for a while. But the civil service, I'd already got a place, and the sick leave conditions in the civil service were pretty good, and are pretty good. I was allowed to have some shortened hours work so I could build myself up again. But mentally and emotionally, well, we were a young married couple. It was heaven on earth, you see. And eventually we had a daughter, and an absolute joy to us. And my wife is now no longer with us, but my daughter is, and her daughters. So I got a family, and they look after me very well, you see. So it was quite, it was very rewarding.
Yeah.
But I didn't go mad. I didn't go on the drink or anything. I never smoke. So I'm very careful about food. And I only have plain food, very plain. If I go out for dinner with a party of people, invariably I've got to very choosy what I eat, because the plainer the better, the food. If I have anything too rich, it does rebound a bit. And I suppose really the rubbish I ate as a prisoner of war has injured my stomach in some way. But so I got to play up with my old friend in here, make sure. But I live happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
And nothing seems to get me down. I swore when one of my friends I came home with, he lived at Bournemouth, down there. And when I last saw him, and that was just after we got home, he came to my house in Sunbury. And I said to him at the time, I said, "George, I remember talking to you in the desert when we were prisoners and amongst all those wounded chaps." I said, "I made up my mind, and I told you, nothing now is ever going to get me down. life cannot be any worse than it is now. At that time, I said, it's too bad, but nothing's going to get me down, ever. And he said, well, that's a good policy if you can stick to it. He said, I don't think I can stick to it. I said, well, I'm going to, and I have. I said, nothing can be worse than what we're going through at the moment. That's out there. He agreed. He did say that was a possibility, but I didn't dwell on it too much after that.
Just live life.
And eventually he died. But that's my policy. Happy-go-lucky. And it's only, my feet are a bit troublesome now, walking. And I had bronchitis about 4 or 5 years ago, and I lost my voice, and that hasn't come back properly. That's why it's a rather grating voice. And I used to be a fairly good tenor in the choir, singing, but I can't sing anymore. They'd shoot me because I'm on the stage. But there you are.
Yeah.
So that's a rough outline of my life.
Well, you know what? It's been a real pleasure starting with you today, and
what will you do? Edit it that in some way?
I'm not going to edit. We'll just put this out, and I mean, it's fascinating. I think you've.
How's that?
I don't know if we've gone into that. You know, how can we go over 3 years of being a POW? You know, it's a what a crazy existence that life must have been for that period of time. But I thank you so much, and we will leave it there.